Hello YouTubers, you're on the 20th Action Reaction, and today we're going to be riding to the roads of Valhalla, shiny and chrome, with Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road is directed by George Miller. It stars Tom Hardy as Max Rokitansky, Charlize Theron as Furiosa, Nicholas Hoult as Nux, Hugh Keays-Byrne as Immortan Joe, and as the brides, Zoe Kravitz, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, Riley Keough, Abby Lee, and Courtney Eden. Mad Max Fury Road is an apocalyptic story set in the furthest reaches of our planet, in a stark desert landscape where humanity is broken and almost everyone is crazed, fighting for the necessities of life. Within this world exist two rebels on the run. First, there's Max, a man of action and a man of few words, who seeks peace of mind following the loss of his wife and child in the aftermath of the chaos. And then there's Furiosa, a woman of action and a woman who believes her path to survival may be achieved if she can make it across the desert back to her childhood homeland. Max and Furiosa must make it across the desert and stay one step ahead of marauders chasing after them. So to put it shortly, that's what Mad Max Fury Road is about. It's pretty much a chase film. It's a very simple story, probably one of the most simple action movies and just simple films I've seen in a very long time. But that doesn't mean it does not have a story. It does have a story. And I like how straightforward it is. It doesn't have to be too complex, and everything is just fantastic about this movie. This came out in May of 2015, and for those of you who have seen my other action reaction reviews, I reviewed the Mad Max trilogy, and that film series really inspired me, not only as an audience member, but to be a filmmaker. I got into that at a very young age with the Mad Max trilogy, so I've been a fan of Mad Max for a very long time. So even though it wasn't going to have Mel Gibson, when I heard that there was going to be a Mad Max sequel, that George Miller was going to come back to direct, I was very excited. So I had high anticipations for this film. However, I didn't think it was going to be this good, and Mad Max Fury Road is one of the best action films of the 21st century, just one of the best action films ever made. It's a chase film. It starts off with Max. You see how he is, and they take a little bit of embellishments. This might be after Thunderdome. It could be before, who knows, but it's definitely in the lore of Mad Max. He has his V8 Interceptor back, and he gets attacked by these marauders, and they are people who belong to Immortan Joe, who's this villain. Hugh Keays-Byrne comes back to play a villain. He was the toe cutter in the original 1979 Mad Max, and he plays Immortan Joe in this installment. And that's kind of cool that he not only comes back to play a villain, but he also comes back in this sort of reboot / sequel to Mad Max to be a villain to start off with, this new Max, played by Tom Hardy. Max is in prison there. They take his car, and he's pretty much used as a blood bag. And Furiosa also belongs to Immortan Joe, but she betrays them, takes Immortan Joe's wives away from him, and she wants to go back to her homeland where she came from. Turns out Immortan Joe would take these women from their homes and pretty much enslave them. Enslave different people. They either use them as blood bags, wives, slaves, you name it. It's pretty bad. And water is scarce. It's one of the few areas where there's still grass, and everything is so desolate and desert-like. Pretty much everything's just amplified from the Mad Max trilogy. Anyway, there's a limited amount of water that's not used for everyone. So Furiosa wants to escape, and it pretty much turns to one giant car chase once her and Max get together. They have to make it to this homeland, and spoiler warning, they have to go right back to the way they came. So it's like pretty much point A to point B to point C to like, okay, we're gonna have to go all the way back to point A at the end, and it's just amazing. Yeah, it's just one giant car chase, Mad Max Fury Road. But let's get to the story. There is a story, and it's more character-driven. It's not, say the least, as story-filled as the first Mad Max or Beyond Thunderdome, but it kind of has more liking to the Road Warrior as far as action. And it's all on the road, but you still get to learn about the characters and stuff like that. And there's been some things about whether or not Mad Max is playing second fiddle. Max is still a character. Mel Gibson only has 16 lines of dialogue. I think Tom Hardy has like about 64 lines of dialogue in this one, where Mel Gibson has 16 lines of dialogue in Road Warrior. But Charlize Theron as Furiosa, she pretty much is like the female Max. And she kicks ass and takes names. She is one person you do not want to just mess with. She is badass. Furiosa is just one of my favorite female heroines. 2015 was a good year, but like, yeah, Furiosa just kicks a lot of ass and takes a lot of names. I like the new additions. All the younger actors do a great job. Nicholas Hoult plays a good character as Nux. He's really crazy and out there. I liked his work in Warm Bodies and the X-Men series, but here you really get to see a different side of him. Tom Hardy also surprised me. There's some parts of him in this film that remind me a little bit of Mel Gibson, although you could tell his voice sounds a little bit more like it did as Bane. He's not like Mel Gibson's Max, but he's still a pretty good Max in my opinion. He's a more kind of feral, animal-like Max Rockatansky. It shows how mad he's gotten, how far in this world. And he does a great job from what he's given. Sure, there could have been some other actors that could have done that, but I really like Tom Hardy's presence and what he put into the role of Max. It's almost like, I think it would have failed if you had a different director. George Miller comes back to do this. He only directed parts of Thunderdome, so he hasn't really done a Mad Max fully, like the full film, since Road Warrior, and it's nice because it feels like a Mad Max film. That's one thing I have to say. There's just a little bit of computerization, but you can't tell, and it's mostly real, it's mostly practical, and that makes a big difference. When there's explosions that happen, they're real explosions. The only time there's like computerization or CGI effects is when it's just additional shots of wrecks or like mountains where they want to add more detail to the landscapes and stuff. That's like the only time they used it. Pretty much everything else is all real. And holy shit, is that a breath of fresh air in this decade. I think that's why it works. It's one of the better sequels to be made years later. Like, years later. I think it was pretty much like almost 30 years after the last one. That's a long time. But it never had that vibe like Live Free or Die Hard or Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of Crystal Skull where it felt different. No, this still felt like the first three movies, even though it was filmed much later. But yeah, George Miller just knows how to direct a damn good movie. He knows what's needed, and it's almost like you could watch this film without any sound or music, and it's just like a silent film. And that's very rare. It's very rare to have an action movie made with this much effort and quality put into it. But I really like how strong-willed Furiosa is and how Max is. They really complement each other and sometimes butt heads, especially when they first meet. But I really like that dynamic between Charlize Theron's Furiosa and Tom Hardy's Max Rockatansky. And there is some nods to the previous films. There's this part where he has a nightmare and he sees like eyes bulging out, and it's like the toe cutter's death from Mad Max 1. So I thought that was really cool how there's just a slight nods to previous films. And you also get to see this one part with the Gyro Captain's helmet on a skull. Speaking of car chases, the Flaming Guitar guy rocked. I loved his role in this, and I just love all the vehicles. Everything was made practically, and that just adds a whole nother layer to the film. And I like how they are. It's very original. The chases, how it's in a tanker, it's not in a fast car, so you get to see the struggles they have with that in environments and different people. And Junkie XL does the soundtrack for this. Amazing soundtrack. Brothers in Arms and Spiky Cars are two of my favorite instrumental tracks from any film. Does a great job on the soundtrack. Cinematography and everything is just top notch. It is a beautiful, beautiful film. Again, like I said earlier, you could just have the sound off and just watch it. And there's a black and white chrome edition, which you can also do on your TV if you have the presets turned to black and white. It doesn't look bad, but I would watch this film in color. It looks fantastic in color. I mean, it's beautiful. For being such a dark wasteland and just desolate, it's very beautiful at the same time. There's something there. And I like how they added the element of, like, water gone. Because in the other one, it was just gasoline and stuff. And this one is, like, water. The water wars. What happened to the water? And you see, like, the way the world is now, that we could end up being like Mad Max. Like, out of all the films. So to have that element of water added into this one really elevated everything that was built up in the trilogy. Do you have to watch the previous Mad Maxes to watch Fury Road? No, you do not, but it's a worthy sequel, and it may be one of the best ones. Me personally, I like Road Warrior the best still, but Mad Max Fury Road is an amazing work of cinema. It's a piece of art. It's awesome. And I like the story, the villains, and Morton Joe is he's just a slob. He's just one of those men that's just like so power hungry, and yeah, I don't like him. He's pretty much the epitome of everything that's just wrong with mankind, with man. And I like it. I like how they have these female heroes here. It's a different element. I like how Max helps him. Max is always like that. He's kind of like the man with no name from Clint Eastwood, where he just has different scenarios. You got to know Max Rockatansky in the original, but here it's like you don't know much of his past. It's like the Road Warrior, where he's pretty much silent. He finds this group of people or gets involved in this situation and has to help them out. And that's always the way Max has been. It's always just been like meeting certain people and then leaving. And he's very much that Western motif of like the man with no name. And I like that in his character, how they still retain that in this. And again, George Miller directing really added a new layer that if any other director did it, it wouldn't have worked the way it did. But it wouldn't have remained. It would not have remained true to what is Mad Max. And George Miller did. And even better is that it feels, the way it's filmed practically, feels like the first three Mad Max films. I never got the feeling of like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or Live Free or Die Hard, where I'm like, that was enjoyable, but it didn't feel like the other films. This one, you could watch all three and then Fury Road, and it felt like the same universe, the same feeling that you have, even though this is filmed much later. Mel Gibson was going to star in this originally. This was supposed to be made in 2001. Then the attack on the World Trade Centers happened. Currency and the dollar just went out the window, just was crazy for the budget and the inflation. So they waited, and George Miller moved to Happy Feet, and then they were going to film in like the late 2000s, like 2007. The area they're going to film at had rain for like the first time in 30 years. So they just kept waiting, and then Mel Gibson ultimately said, hey, I'm getting too old for this. Audiences do not want to see me try to keep up with the action. They want to have a young guy that can keep up with the action. And as much as I would have loved Mel Gibson in this, I think he's wise for recommending another actor. You didn't get to see like a shadow of a former character. It's like he still was a character. Tom Hardy as Max. I mean, I still love Mel Gibson. He is Max. He is Mad Max. But Tom Hardy brought another layer to it while still remaining true to the character, much in the way that Chris Pine brings his own element to James T. Kirk, but still remains true to what William Shatner built. It has that same feeling of just like another actor replacing the character, but the character still feeling the same. And I love that. So, before I move on, you may ask, what do I give Mad Max Fury Road? What's my reaction? I give it a 5 out of 5 and an A+. Mad Max Fury Road is a tour de force that also has some Oscar wins as well. It's very rare that you get an action movie that get Oscar wins. Visual effects, costuming, stuff like that. I mean, Mad Max Fury Road is just amazing. Mad Max Fury Road is one of those movies that's just a breath of fresh air that comes every once in a while that you're not expecting, and it just sweeps you off your feet. And I love it. Another thing that I like about this is that Max Furiosa, the characters, get hurt. They go through struggles. They have to go through conflicts, things to overcome. And I love that because it raises the stakes and gets you invested in the characters. Are they going to make it to the end? They're not superheroes, so like when they get hurt, and you're like, oh my god, there's much more intensity and stakes added to this chase. And this film does have its share of casualties, and that's one thing that makes it a great action movie, is that your characters can bleed, get tired, get aggravated, get hurt, you know? And it adds a lot more. It reminds me of the way like the previous 3 Mad Max films were, or like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's not like Live Free or Die Hard and Crystal Skull where like they pretty much can do everything. No, these people are still human. They're still casualties. And I love that. Mad Max Fury Road is a simple film. It's a chase film that has a lot of great action, and it does have a story. It's just a very simple one, and sometimes that's all you need, is a good story that's basic. It goes from point A to point B to point C, or like I said, sometimes from point C all the way back to point A. Like I said, Mad Max Fury Road is one of those rare films that comes along that just goes back to basics and has the fundamentals of what makes a film good and just delivers on it in spades. So yeah, Mad Max Fury Road gets a 5 out of 5 and an A+. I love the performances from Charlize Theron. She is awesome as Furiosa. She deserves her own film. Tom Hardy does a good job as Mad Max. He can never be Mel Gibson's Max, but he does good in the role for this film. I'm kind of anxious to see how they'll go with his role in Mad Max: The Wasteland. Nicholas Hoult does good. The actresses who play the wives do a good job. I like the romance between Riley Keough's character and Nicholas Hoult. That was a nice element added. I like the relationship Abby Lee had with the older woman, and then her talking about how the world used to be. That was a very deep scene. Very emotional filled, and there's also character development with all the characters there and Furiosa's homeland. That one scene where she's screaming in the desert was just insane. And Hugh Keys-Byrne, yeah, he knows how to play a villain. I mean, from all the way from the Toe Cutter to Morton Joe, he just plays a bastard, and I love it. So, besides that, the direction, the cinematography, everything is top-notch, well-made. And yeah, if you have not seen Mad Max Fury Road and you love action movies, go ride to the roads of Valhalla, shiny and chrome. See Mad Max Fury Road. It's amazing. And also see the Mad Max trilogy. They're all great films if you're into like action films or post-apocalyptic films. Also, if you're a Mad Max fan, be on the lookout for Vertigo. There's Vertigo Comics had a Mad Max prequel comic series that's set after Thunderdome but before Fury Road. That's with Mad Max, and it has him. So it has their stories, and it's set after Beyond Thunderdome, but before Fury Road, and I would highly recommend checking it out if you're a fan. Also, check out Mad Max the video game. It takes place after Mad Max Fury Road, and it's just really awesome. Although I really wish they got Tom Hardy or Mel Gibson, but they don't. But nevertheless, I could go into Mad Max Fury Road much more, but that's all I want to talk about today to keep it short. Anyway, thank you for watching this 20th episode of Action Reaction. And yeah, we'll see what happens next month with the different reviews. I want to go into a more in-depth review of Highlander and then Expendables 2 and 3. But until then, that is it for Action Reaction on this 20th episode. If you haven't seen it, check out Mad Max Fury Road. And if you have seen it, let me know what are your favorite moments in the thoughts below. Did you like the movie? Did you hate the movie? What's your favorite Mad Max film? And if you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my other videos on the channel. Thank you for watching.